Welcome to Money 911, Money Mastery, Unlocking the Integrative Leadership Potential. I'm your host, Kris Miller, and today we're joined by Sonia Jeantet, founder of SEMA Executive Development and author of The Integrative Leader. Sonia is known as the Leadership Suite Whisperer for her work with major organizations like Toyota, Mattel, and Netflix. Get ready to discover how integrative leadership can transform your financial and personal life. All right, Sonia, it's so fabulous to have you here. And your work focuses on integrative leadership. You know, that's a big mouthful, but maybe just to start off, explain what that means and how that relates to financial success.
So integrative leadership, for me, based on the book that I wrote, has to do with being able to use all of your faculties of your mind, basically using your left brain and your right brain. And there was actually like a study done in 2019 that looked at what percentage of leaders in the C-suite actually were skilled at being able to use the competencies that come from both the left and the right brain. And then let's evaluate, and this was done worldwide. It was over, many, many countries. And they basically came up with the fact that less than 8% of C-suite leaders are actually whole brain thinkers and lead from a whole brain place. And those that do have a 22% over a 3-year period of time greater revenue and 34% higher profitability. And that's EBITDA. And so it was like, you'd want to have people being able to make decisions, staff their different departments, lead from a place that use the entire brain and integrated all the profitability.
You know, that's amazing. You would think it would be a lot different. What was it? 10%?
8%.
8% apply cognitive diversity. Is that what they call it? Right.
Correct.
And embracing the whole brain, the thinking leading to better financial decision making. And I've been really studying this a whole lot on a lot of levels, spiritual, physical, mental.
Correct.
You got to have all of it.
We're designed that way.
Right.
You know, our actual body, when you do any kind of research, or you have people that actually do the research, they're able to find that just looking at your body, there's different systems in your body that are naturally integrated, like your digestive system to your heart,
right,
to other parts. So if we're designed that way internally, our mind is also designed that way. But if we're not actually applying it because we have a preference, or we have if you will, a blind spot, then it affects our ability to actually be whole brain thinkers.
Right. You know, I had Greg Braden on my show, and he's amazing. And, he weaves together spiritual God with science and cognitive. And, he works with the heart, mind, the cognitive in the Bay Area, right? I'm sure you know them.
Yes, I do know him.
And it's so interesting because how your heart and now they've discovered that your heart has brains, cells, like they're really connected.
It has more pathways than the brain does.
Isn't that crazy?
That's why when we get emotionally depressed, or we get into a funk, it really affects our whole health.
Absolutely.
And I think right now we're living in such transformative times, that most people, if left to their own devices, don't want to embrace change on a daily basis or on a monthly basis. Sometimes we don't have a choice now. We know that literally out of the blue, something can happen and it can totally change what our paradigms are, what we can do today.
Yep.
So being able to get more resilient and being able to get to a place where we have more flexibility helps us get there. Otherwise, we snap.
Exactly. And it's just
Exactly.
like an instant. I just went through that myself this year. Just, everything's going along. And then that thing happens, and then the whole world changes.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be fluid and have the heart and mind and connection with spirit together, everything together. You talk about, and it's neat because you're talking about, things I'm asking you inside of it, but your book, Integrative Leader, the thriving times of profound change, right? That's really
Right.
so. How do the listeners navigate, through financial, emotional, all the insecurities that are attacking in the shift, the big shift, and people really have a choice to rise or fall at this time?
That is so true. So basically, what I did was I created a model, and I'm going to show it to you real quickly and walk you through it. And basically, what I decided is when we're solving problems, we're answering the basic questions: what, why, where, when, how. And I decided, let's take a look at what the return on each one of answering each one of those questions is. So when we're answering the question, what, it's normally what's the return on the investment? Like, what is the nature of the idea? If we're looking at who, like who's going to be working on this, who's going to be involved with that, that's return on the interpersonal interaction. That's that whole emotional intelligence quotient. When we're looking at innovate, why are we doing this? When you think of like different leaders that are known for how they led their companies, you think of Steve Jobs at Apple. And his whole thing of coming up with the iPad, coming up with the iPhone was, why are we doing this for why is it that we're using these kinds of devices? And that's return on imaginative intelligence. And then when we're actually trying to implement something, how are we going to become more efficient at something? We're looking at the process. We're basically answering the question, how? How are we going to get it done? So that's return on the process. Then if we look at the ones that really use the whole brain in order for you to answer the question is, where are we? Where are we in our journey? Where are we in our industry? Where are we in terms of the design of this product? And that's return on situational awareness. It's like you have to take yourself above the situation, look at the full picture and understand what's going on. And then the one that most of us struggle with is, when do I do this? When do we actually go out and make something happen? And that's return on cognitive agility. You're using all parts of your brain to recognize, is this the right time? There's investors out there that actually say, like, that when you ask them, like, how did you know to make that investment? It was like, no, I got this feeling in my back, or I got this feeling in my gut. But it's basically, we've honed in on something that we do consistently. In my book, I decided to use the example in baseball of one of the players who's out there stealing another base. That's a big risk. You have to decide, how fast can I run? Where the ball's going to go when the pitcher sends it out. All of those factors come together in us deciding when we're going to take action. And so that was my purpose, was try to come up with an approach that was easy. We all answer these questions consistently when we're solving any kind of problems. Identify that there's a return for that, and then allow you to get sort of interested in trying to pursue that.
Right. Right. Well, certainly, your experience with the tech industry, right,
Correct.
really shaped, you can tell everybody a little bit about that, how that shaped your leadership and financial management.
Yes. So I was fortunate enough to, out of graduate school, to get hired in technology at a time when they were actually doing an experiment. Some ex-IBMers had started this small company called Four-Phase Systems that would eventually be acquired by Motorola. And their goal was, let's bring people who have master's and business degrees, so they're looking at things from a business return, and let's teach them how to actually go in and talk to CTOs and CIOs about how technology can really help their business be more profitable, be better run, if you will. And so as a result of starting there, I didn't stay there for long once the acquisition happened, because I learned a lot about what happens in acquisitions. Somebody encouraged me to go look at Hewlett Packard. And I actually then applied and got hired. And I spent a big portion of my career at Hewlett Packard. And Hewlett Packard had a deep culture about really being innovative and being very much looking out for the profitability of the organization, because they had a profit sharing check that they delivered twice a year, in June and in December. And having worked there, I realized that the extra check in June could be an entire paycheck. And the extra check in December could be the same thing. So it was like, what would pay for the summer vacation? What would pay for the gifts and celebrations at Christmas time? And so you begin to get this connection about managing resources effectively gives you a lot of freedom and gives you the opportunity to make the investments where you want to. If you wanted to like donate to your church or to whatever organization, you would have the opportunity to do so. So that's how I got started. The other thing I learned is how fast things could change, because at that point in time, the technology was changing at such a fast frequency, and then software vendors were getting started, that I think is where I learned a lot about being resilient and about being able to figure out change is not something I can choose. Change is something I need to actually embrace, understand, and have a process to do so. You know, I read recently, and interestingly enough, that so for a lot of people, you know, when you get change, all you feel is you're in turbulence. My world is upside down. I don't know what to do. And so I heard recently that pilots, when they're trained, is if you're actually flying through turbulence, there's 3 steps you follow. The first one is climb. So you move outside of the turbulence. That's looking at the big picture. The second thing you do is conserve. You figure out how much fuel you have to get to your destination. So you figure out how to fly in a way that it's not going to consume all of the fuel before you get there. And then the third is, they call it confess. You actually inform, you know, somebody on the ground or somebody that knows their best path forward so that you can get there. And I think for a lot of leaders, when I think of the work that I did, that's what I was doing. I was helping them elevate themselves from the situation so that they didn't take it personally, they didn't get stuck. Then they could actually sit down and take a look at, well, what do we need to keep? What do we need to conserve? What do we need to expand? What do we need to innovate? And then lastly, it's like, so now who should be on the team, or who should be part of the thought council? Who should be part of the group that we, even if you're polling your clients, they're still part of understanding the ecosystem you live in.
That's good. Well, you know, many of our listeners are aspiring leaders. So in a little deep dive, what advice would you give them to develop their integrative leadership skills and, you know, improve their financial outcome and just stay in balance?
So I think the first thing that they should look at when you're working somewhere, you probably get a sense of, you know, let's say we were thinking of a building and your job right now is on the 3rd floor, but you know that your building is a 50-floor building. And so you know that there's people at the 30th floor and the 47th floor that could possibly be mentors to you, could possibly be people that you could learn from. And so one of the things I encourage people is to figure out, what other things could you be doing that expands your knowledge of the business you do and gives you the opportunity to try new things for yourself. So if you're in a very left brain kind of function, which is like accounting or technology or engineering, try something that has more to do with the right brain. Where can you be more innovative? Where can you spend more time with people or with leading groups or participating on teams? So those are the things I would say would be important for them to understand. The second thing is, you know, look for a good financial planner. Look for somebody that you think understands money much better than you do. And so that they can actually walk you through. I think the thing for me that was like such an aha experience was understanding how money could grow over time. And so if I was just willing to make a commitment on a monthly basis or on a yearly basis to put away X amount of money and allow it to be invested appropriately, then I wasn't going to have to panic when I got to a particular place. And so I think that you need an expert. And so the more that you can learn early on from people that understand money and resources. And the other thing that you learn about yourself is how much risk are you willing to take? Because some of us don't like a lot of risk, and some of us will say, I remember one of my dad, my mom ended up passing away after they'd been married for 47 years. And he was still, relatively young, and he ended up meeting another lady, and they ended up getting married. And she had a grandson who was graduating from college. He'd been getting a medical degree, but he had an interest in business. And he actually shared with her that he was trying to start his own company, and, he needed some funding. And my father sat there and said, let's look at his grades. Let's look at what kind of plan he has. Let's invest in this. And they invested. And 3 years after he started his company, he went public. And my father got a phenomenal return on that when he was in his 80s.
Right.
So now he did his due diligence, he did his research, but he recognized investing in those who are coming up with what's new and what is needed in the marketplace can provide an advantage.
Right. That's a beautiful story. And the main thing, my business is healthy money. I've just seen that you go to school, you learn how to make money, you get out of school. What do? Go make money, and you give it to somebody else to usually gamble. So it's a roulette wheel. The system was set up. There are safe places people don't know about. So that's why I took time out in my life. I have a financial literacy course.
Oh, that's great.
Teach people about there are 3 things that they miss. Protection of assets from catastrophic illness. 70% of us end up in a nursing home after 65. And nobody wants to talk about, right, death and taxes or illness. And that's what wipes people out. Sonia, this, I'm just getting off on this thing that gets me every time, because I literally have done this for 34 years with over 6,000 clients. And there was this pattern. But the sad part of it was, and I don't know the stat, but it's like up there, most people end up losing all their assets before they pass away in a nursing home or probate, not having the right paperwork, or in the stock market, because it's a roulette wheel.
Yes.
And there's a subconscious, like, is it going to be up or down when I retire? And that is not the way to live. So I encourage people to take time out, watch some of my other videos on healthy money, because I'm never lost a dime in any market risk. So I show people the safe money side. And when you get you start getting older, you want a certain percentage in safe money and tax-free income for life. The things that nobody knows about have been around since the Middle Ages, and only the 1% know about it. So anyway, I just went on my...
Well, Kris, that's exactly what, and I think of it as a gift. It's somebody who is still young. When I say young, they're in their 30s and they're beginning to form their career. They're going into their earning years. Their ability to be able to know and consult with somebody like you. I'm thinking about this. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
I think the problem that we have today, when you look at the stock market, and unfortunately that's the case, is they'll focus on 7 different companies or 5 different companies.
Right.
In terms of, they've been going up, or their trend's been going up.
Yeah.
And the way that I was taught, and I go back to my Hewlett Packard days, it was like, who's managing the business? Look at the leadership, look at the governance, look at their policies, look at their marketplace. There's so much things that you have to understand about, is this a well-managed, organization? Yeah. And is this company going to make it long-term? I think that one of my clients, I've been fortunate enough to have clients in a variety of different industries, in a variety of different places in their, whether they were like long established or more entrepreneurial. There was a client that I was introduced to about 15 years ago. And he was they were an engineering firm. They were small, in their engineering function. There was about 40 people in their company. And I ended up meeting them just before they started merging with another company. And there was like now 80 engineers. They had like 4 offices. And I have seen that organization grow to eventually be acquired 3 years ago by a global firm, which completely, obviously took them into a whole new realm. Now, why did that happen? It wasn't luck. It was the people who were running it ran a good business. They hired smart. They did all the right things. They built the right relationship with their clients. So there is an actual method and there's actually an approach to companies that are well run. And it doesn't have to do with their stock price necessarily.
Right. And, you don't want to be throwing darts at these companies. You want tried and tested, but you've worked with some major companies like Toyota and Netflix. So just that, that's a whole other level. I'm sure she's laughing, right? I'm gonna ask you what common traits that you observed, right? That these successful integrative leaders have used.
Yeah, so I would say the thing that I'm fortunate enough that when I started coaching, I realized that at that point in time, people might put people like me as coaches to work on fix it kind of situations. Please fix this executive. They're really dysfunctional. They're derailing. We have a lot of problems with them. But they were also making investments in high potentials, in people that had the opportunity to grow their careers. They were showing a lot of promise. And so I basically, convinced several of the companies I was working with that using me more effectively was in working with the high potentials, because I could then give them some sense of what their strengths were, what their blind spots were, what kinds of other functions they might be promoted to that would create whole brain thinking, cognitive diversity to help them be better leaders when they got into a general manager role or that kind of thing. And so I would say that that's what I've seen. The other thing that I would say is coaching is something that requires feedback. And so often we as coaches are conducting 360s. We're interviewing the people that these people work with to get a sense of what's working and what's not. And so when you look at like a Netflix or a Toyota or a City National Bank or a Warner Brothers or a Mattel, these people took that advice very serious, took that information very seriously. We created a development plan that would allow them to, if you will, manage those things that were not working and then leverage the things that were working and were their strengths.
That's brilliant. Tell everybody how they can get in contact with you.
Okay.
And about your book and everything that you do.
So my book is available on Amazon. The book is titled The Integrative Leader. And I have a website. My website is called CIMAED, CIMAED.com. I'm originally from Colombia, and when I was starting my company, I wanted to use the name, Peak Executive Development. Well, that was taken. So I thought, well, CIMA in Spanish is peak. I can shorten it to ED, Executive Development. So that's why it's CIMAED.com. Great. And, you can get on my site. You can actually ask for an introductory meeting. You can call our offices. So, any way that you want to reach out to us.
Absolutely. So if our listeners today wanted to take one action to become more integrative in their approach to money and leadership, what would you recommend?
The thing I would probably recommend is make a list of the things that you have put off doing or planning, and ask yourself, is it because it's not in my wheelhouse? Is it not my strength? Because we tend to put off the things that we don't know how to do or we feel uncomfortable about. And if that's the case, who that in your area probably has that as a strength, give them a call and set up 15 minutes, 20 minutes just to bring up the idea. You may be surprised at 2 things. One is You may get somebody that says, hey, I can help you with that. Let me do that for you. Or let me give you some ideas, and you're off to the races. But at the very least, you'll be thinking differently.
That's good. I know I'm that kind of person trying to do everything myself. It's too much. You gotta have other hands in there. Sonia, give everybody one final thought to go home with.
Well, though, I guess the final thought that I have is you can be as strong and as resilient as you want to be. You just have to choose to think differently.
That's the truth. It's really that simple, right? It's amazing. Sonia, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today, and I'll look forward to continuing our conversation.
Thank you, Kris. So, same thing to you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Money 911, today's Money Mastery, Unlocking Your Integrative Leadership Potential. We've been inspired by Sonia's insights on integrative leadership and its impact on financial success. Remember, by embracing cognitive diversity and whole brain thinking, you can transform your approach to money and leadership. Join us next time for more transformational conversations that will elevate your financial journey. There's so much to learn about healthy money. I hope today's discussion brings you one step closer to securing and protecting your future. So you can get started on the right foot, go to meetwithchrismiller.com and schedule your free financial fitness strategy session. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Money 911 so you don't miss our next episode, which includes health, wealth, and peace of mind.